What's wrong with my hair?
Do you really want me to answer that? We'll be here all day.
Schlafmittel wirkt wohl ja voll.
And then he said, "Oh, hello there. I don't believe we've met."
Mrs. Delacroix, this is my husband, Miles. Miles, this is Mrs. Delacroix.
Pleasure to meet you, madam.
Likewise, young man. Pleasure.
Is everything all right, Mrs. Delacroix?
Oh, yes, everything's fine. It's just that, well, you weren't what I was expecting, is all.
Keep your head, Miles. She may be a closed-minded idiot, but she's just an old lady.
Vielleicht hätte ich mich vom Spiegel noch ein bisschen frisch machen sollen. Haha. Was genau? Warte, okay. Sind deine Kundinnen alle so unhöflich? Und das Bild über dem Kamin verfügt sie kein Fingerzeig?
What were you expecting exactly?
Well...
Now then, Mrs. Delacroix, what was it that you were telling me about Mr. Delacroix and his dogs?
Oh, yes. So, Harold came in and said...
Impressive. She got off pretty easy. I was expecting a repeat of the Parsons incident. You should give Adelaide a kiss on the way out, though, just to make the old bat feel extra uncomfortable.
Mal gucken, ob wir...
It's admirable just how organized Adelaide is. Maybe someday the same can be said about you.
Achso, also wir können uns hier gar nicht fertig machen. Ja dann. Sie steht auf ihn.
Not right now, Miles. I'm busy. We can talk once I finish with Mrs. Delacroix.
She can get as painted up and coiffed as she likes. It's not gonna fix the ugliness inside.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye, dearest.
Ah.
I look forward to your return, my love.
Knuti. Knuti.
Remind me, Miles, how is finding some rich people's kidnapped baby going to help us track down the flower shop burglar?
Es geht nicht um den Blumendieb. Ich will Menschen helfen. Vielleicht finden wir während der Nachforschungen eine Spur, die zu ihm führt. Ich weiß nicht, vielleicht hilft es auch nicht.
I have no idea. Maybe it won't, but this needs to be done.
Very noble of you, Miles. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were purposefully stalling.
Don't be ridiculous. I want to find the man as much as you do. You know that.
Right. Well, if you plan on solving this case, you'll need your full wits about you.
Gwildor, grüß die. Was soll das denn heißen? Mir geht's gut, Billy schafft das. Worüber nörgelst du jetzt wieder?
I do have my full wits about me. I'm perfectly capable of doing this.
Yes, and I'm perfectly capable of being alive. I just choose to be this way because it saves on the laundry expenses. You can't deny it. You need to stop taking the soporific, Miles. Adelaide has been trying to get you to stop for months, and Upton already suspects something is amiss. Not to mention your little episode last night. Trust me, no one is going to want to hire the dullard detective.
Clever. Did you come up with that one all by yourself?
What are you going to do when the cases stop coming in? How long before you get put away in Riverview?
If I do get locked away, it'll be your fault.
Which is exactly why you need to get back to your normal routine so you can find the burglar.
Okay, ich höre damit auf, aber wenn du mich nachts wach hältst, okay, ich höre damit auf. Aber das bedeutet nicht, dass wir dann plötzlich morgen einen Blumenlied finden. Okay, ich höre damit auf. Aber das wird nur dazu führen, dass ich früher aufwache. Ich höre damit auf, aber wenn du mich... Ja.
Alright, fine. I'll stop. But if you keep me awake at night, so help me.
Don't worry. I'm sure you'll find a way to cope. You were always good at that. Well, I'm glad that's settled then. I knew you'd see things my way eventually.
It's not as though you gave me much of a choice.
In time, you'll thank me. Probably not before the withdrawal hits, though.
Don't make me change my mind on this, Bill.
Mr. Fordham, you're back. Allow me to introduce my wife, Miriam.
Hello.
A pleasure, Mrs. Harris. I wish we could have met under better circumstances, but I assure you I'm doing all I can to find your son.
Thank you, Mr. Fordham.
Mr. Harris, has there been any communication from the kidnapper?
None at all.
Well, I'll have another look around, if you don't mind.
Okay, wir müssen nochmal natürlich hier.
Miles, didn't you notice something a bit strange about the Harrises?
Quite a few things, actually. What are you referring to?
His son was just kidnapped, yet they're each on their own side of the sitting room. Not comforting each other, not crying together. Nothing.
They're stuck-up rich people. Not exactly the type to show emotion.
Miles, you know I'm the most cynical person there is when it comes to their type. But this isn't normal behavior, even for snobs. This goes deeper than saving face. There's something going on between them. I think you should find out what.
That's crazy.
That's odd. Why is there a loose button in the crib? Now, I'm no expert on children, but it seems like it would be dangerous to have around an infant. Yeah, the kidnapper left the child's blanket behind. There doesn't appear to be any trace of the silver spoon, though. Nice mobile. Custom made, too. There'll be no mistaking what family this child comes from.
So. Das stimmt, ein Knöpfchen sollte da eigentlich nicht, aber kann ich dann nicht den Knopf nehmen? Doch.
Ah, if only the flower shop burglar was as easy to find as this clue was.
Okay, Hinweis gefunden.
Some sort of fuzzy animal wearing a waistcoat. Charming. Look at that. The kid has a toy chest. My sister and I used to have to keep our toys buried in the backyard. Of course, that is because the only toys we had were dead rats. My friend Bunny. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want a giant imaginary rabbit for a friend. Bear's picnic. Something about a group of giant human-like bears eating together in the woods is slightly unsettling. A steam-powered bottle warmer. Certainly beats having to do it in the fireplace. Or in the case of my parents, over a barrel fire. The Harris family certainly has a nice view from which to look down upon the world. I wonder if they use the balcony to give speeches to the gardeners.
Okay. Geht's erstmal da lang und dann rede ich nochmal mit den beiden. Hübsch.
Who in their
Kommode.
right mind would need that many drawers?
Let's see what we have here. A very poorly written letter addressed to Mr. Harris.
I don't suppose it's a letter of admiration.
On the contrary, the author seems quite upset.
Dokument hinzugefügt. Mr. Harris, hier ist deine wöchentliche Erinnerung zu wissen, wie arg ich dich hasse. Wegen dich ist meine Frau tot. Meine Frau war wundervoll Frau und du hast sie mir genommen. Ich hoffe, dich geht's genauso schlimm wie mich, Arthur Devins. And you have taken her from me. I hope you suffer as much as I have.
Nothing else of note in any of the drawers.
Hoi, hoi, hoi.
Oh well, at least we got to play a rousing game of Search the Rich People's Dresser.
Nothing else of note in any of the drawers.
Oh well, at least we got to play a rousing game of Search the Rich People's Dresser. Wardrobes are usually always full of wonderfully dark secrets. One thing is for certain, Mr. Harris uses entirely too much starch on his shirts. One thing is for certain, Mr. Harris uses entirely too much starch on his shirt. An empty suitcase. I suppose Mr. Harris must travel every now and then.
Das glaube ich auch.
Mr. Harris's color selection is almost as drab as yours.
Let's see if there's anything of interest in any of the pockets.
So, Mr. Harris is a fan of the ponies, is he? I'm sure that's not causing him any trouble at all.
Oh.
Mr. Harris's color selection is almost as drab as yours. Yeah, it seems like this is where Mrs. Harris keeps her unmentionables. I like the ones with the frills and the stitched cat.
What?
Paperwork and receipts. Nothing particularly interesting here. More lacy underthings. I wonder which Harris they belong to.
Und der hat jetzt kein Spitzenhöschen, oder was?
Painting of the city. Probably the only time the Harris family sees any of the other boroughs. Oh, another four-poster. The Harris family certainly makes no secret of their wealth.
Saugsäuberer.
Fancy. Some poor servant's probably gonna get a flogging for leaving it in here, though. It
Kleiderhaufen.
looks like a pile of women's clothes. Must belong to Mrs. Harris.
There's a handwritten note among the clothes.
I have to see you. Miriam, mein Schatz, ich muss dich heute Abend treffen. Wir haben uns viel zu lange nicht gesehen. Miriam, Baby. Was ist denn da los? Na, du Miriam, Baby.
I have some questions for you if you're up to answering them, Mrs. Harris.
I'll try my best, Mr. Fordham.
Oh, Miriam, Baby.
Tell me what you know about your son's kidnapping.
Oh, my poor baby.
Mrs. Harris, I know this is difficult, but I need as much information as you can give me so I can bring your son back.
Yes, you're right. I have to stay strong. For Charles, it happened sometime between 6 and 8 last night. I think both my husband and I had gone out. Charles was in the care of his nanny, Mrs. Davis. I arrived home first, around 8:30, and that's when I found this scene in the nursery, as it was.
And what was it you found?
Mrs. Davis, unconscious in her chair, the broken window, and Charles missing from his crib. Malcolm arrived home shortly afterwards, around 9, and then immediately sent our butler, Mr. Havelock, to notify the police. We stayed up waiting for any contact from the kidnappers, but there was nothing.
You said you arrived home first. Where were you last night?
Oh, I was visiting with some of my friends. We gathered at one of their homes for a concert.
I see. And your husband?
He was at the social club with his friends as well, I believe.
Wait a minute. I know this attitude all too well. This woman is hiding something. Most likely from her husband. I doubt it's voices from beyond the grave. So the question is, what's her secret?
So.
What can you tell me about Mrs. Davis?
Well, she's worked for us since Charles was born, a little over 6 months ago.
How did you come to employ her?
Malcolm's mother had a friend whose daughter she used to care for. She came highly recommended. We've never had any problems with her. She's always been a dream.
Where is she now?
In her room, I would guess. With Charles missing, there's little for her to do.
Where might I find her room?
There's a small building just around the back of the manor. Hers is the 4th door from the left.
Okay. Motiv?
Can you think of any reason why your son would be a target for kidnapping?
It could be that someone wants our money, or some lunatic who's angry about the new airship. My husband's an investor, and my father-in-law owns the company building it, you see. I just don't know, Mr. Fordham. Frankly, the fact that something like this could even happen is just terrifying.
Da war doch einer im Busch. Ja, genau. Zerrissener Stoff.
I found this bit of torn fabric by the broken window. Do you know anything about it?
No, I've never seen it before. Do you think it was left by the kidnapper?
Perhaps. Did the initials SS mean anything to you?
No, I can't think of anyone or anything I know with those initials.
Das Baby.
Tell me about your son.
Charles is our only child. He's such a good boy. Never makes a fuss. Always very sweet. Oh, Charles, you must be so frightened out there without your mother. Oh, please, Mr. Fordham. You have to bring him home.
I'll do my best.
Über sie
Tell me a
selbst?
bit about yourself, Mrs. Harris.
Mr. Fordham, my son has been kidnapped and is out there alone, terrified and confused. What can I possibly tell you that would make any difference to you finding him?
I suppose you're right, Mrs. Harris. My apologies if I upset you.
Handgeschriebene
I
Notiz.
found this note in your bedroom. What can you tell me about it?
I've never seen that note before in my life.
Are you absolutely sure?
Mr. Fordham, you mentioned you valued discretion. I ask you to please exercise some now.
Would it be possible to speak about this in private? In another room, perhaps?
Out of the question, Mr. Fordham. I shall not leave this sitting room in the company of another man if my husband is not present.
Yes, I understand. Let's put the subject on hold for now.
What a life these rich people lead. All the money in the world and they're trapped like rats.
Found this button in your son's crib. Does it look familiar at all?
No, I don't recognize it. It looks like it came from some cheap coat. Is that what the ruffian who took my baby was wearing?
That's what I'm trying to determine. That's all for now, Mrs. Harris.
Very well.
Okay, jetzt sprechen wir nochmal mit Malcolm. Mittendrin.
I have some questions for you, Mr. Harris.
Yes, of course.
Entführung.
Tell me everything you can about the kidnapping.
I don't know much. I was out last night while it happened.
Where had you been previously?
I was out with friends. My wife can verify the time I arrived home.
It seems hiding something from your spouse is an activity both Harrises partake in.
Glaube ich
I
auch.
found this letter in your bedroom. What can you tell me about it?
You went through our things?
I'm a private investigator, Mr. Harris. It's part of my job.
Of all the insolence!
You're upset, I know, but do you want me to find your son or don't you?
Yes, of course I do. That letter was sent to me by mistake. It was written to my father. Well, if you can even call that writing.
Have I ever mentioned how much I hate rich people? Because I really hate rich people.
Your father. Doesn't he own the company building the new airship?
Yes, that's right. He's been receiving many letters just like that one since the Ligeia disaster. But that Devons fellow in particular has sent one every week, along with a bag of chicken bones and dust.
Ugh.
Peculiar.
Not only that, he leads a daily protest in front of the construction yard where the HMS Lenore is being built, trying to halt production. My God! How did I not see this before?
See what?
Devons! He has a grudge against this family because of what happened with the Ligeia. I'd put money on him being involved with the kidnapping somehow, as a form of retaliation.
I'll just have to speak with Mr. Devons and see for myself.
Okay, machen wir auch.
I found this bit of torn fabric by the broken window. Do you know anything about it?
Looks like it came from a piece of clothing. Possibly a jacket.
Do the initials SS mean anything to you?
Maybe? I can't really say. You'll have to excuse me, Mr. Fordham. I've got quite a lot on my mind right now. If I can think of anything, I'll be sure to let you know.
Mr. Harris, what can you tell me about these?
What? How did you...
Listen, I'm trying to help you and your family. I can't do it if I don't get the entire truth.
Do you think we could discuss this somewhere more private?
I suppose we could.
Good. Let's move to the nursery then.
Oho. Jetzt kann ich doch kurz mit ihr reden, oder?
I have some questions for you if you're up to answering them, Mrs. Harris.
I'll try my best, Mr.
Weil jetzt ist
Fordham.
er ja nicht da. Handgeschriebene
Right.
Notiz.
Your husband's not around to hear you, so tell me about this note.
Fine. I got that note last night from Roland.
Roland.
Who is Roland?
Roland is a special friend.
I see.
Oh, don't you judge me, Mr. Fordham. You have no idea what my marriage has been like. Marrying Malcolm wasn't my idea, nor even his. The whole thing was orchestrated by our fathers. They thought merging the two families would be a good business arrangement.
Is your marriage an unhappy one then?
It wasn't easy at first, and it didn't get any easier as it went on, either.
So then why not end it?
Mr. Fordham, we are a respectable family. There are certain considerations. Besides, I had no legal grounds. For all his faults, Malcolm is a very faithful man. Almost frustratingly so. Then, somewhat unexpectedly, we had Charles. At least that made things bearable.
I'm sorry for you, Mrs. Harris, I really am. But I think I should talk to this Roland.
Why? He has nothing to do with this.
That's for me to decide. Where can I find him?
I don't know. I've never been to his home. We usually meet at a hotel.
Can you tell me anything that would help me track him down?
Well, he's a musician. He plays the piano at some clubs in Gascon, but I don't know which for sure.
How about his last name?
I don't know that either.
I gather you don't talk much.
I refuse to answer that question, Mr. Fordham.
It's a good thing I don't have a stomach anymore, because I can guarantee you its contents would be on the floor right now.
That's all for now, Mrs. Harris.
Okay.
Very well.
Jetzt gehen wir zum Mann. Roland Buschmann. So.
Shall we continue our conversation, Mr. Harris?
Yes, of course.
Now that your wife is out of earshot, tell me about the kidnapping and what these betting stubs have to do with it.
Right. As I said before, it had already happened when I got home. I had just come from spending the evening at the meadows.
I see. I take it your wife isn't impressed by your hobby?
I promised her weeks ago that I would stop going, but I've had such a good streak lately. The last thing I wanted was to upset her further, yet it would be foolish of me to just give up on something so promising.
Can you think of anyone who might want to do you harm by taking your son?
Several, I'm afraid.
Go on.
I haven't exactly had the best of luck, Mr. Fordham. That's why this latest streak was so important to me. The truth is, I've gambled away most of my money. I've had to take out several loans so Miriam doesn't get suspicious.
Wow!
If she ever found out, it would be over. I can't lose her, Mr. Fordham. I just can't.
Where have I heard this before? You know, things would be so much easier if people just talked to each other.
I've tried doing business above board, but lately I've had to seek other resources.
What do you mean?
I was forced to visit a lending office. The owner was a rather shady Sambo, but I figured he'd be easier to deal with than the usual sheenies that run those type of places.
Can you believe this guy? Maybe we should just leave the kid be. He'd probably be better raised by wolves.
Who was the owner?
Mr. LeFay. I didn't bother to get his first name. His business is an abattoir row in Chumley. Horrid place, but I was desperate.
You think this Mr. LeFay may have taken your son as collateral?
Let's just say there isn't much those type of people wouldn't do to put a crown in their pocket.
Okay, krass. Auf gut Deutsch gesagt, eine Freundschaft mit Vorzügen. Ja, genau.
Tell me about your son.
Charles is a good boy. Very quiet. Miriam had wanted a child almost from the moment we married. You know how women are when they have their hearts set on something. I saw no need to rush, but
Nice to know you're not the only one. Hey, Miles.
the first 2 times Miriam was with child, she suffered some unfortunate accidents. She was devastated, as you can imagine. So when Charles finally came along, he turned out to be quite a blessing. I can't imagine what sort of depraved madman would take him from us like this. You must find him, Mr. Fordham.
I intend to, Mr. Harris.
Über ihn selbst?
Tell me about yourself.
There isn't much to tell, really. My life has been fairly well publicized in the newspapers.
Let's pretend for a moment that I skip over the society pages.
Well, I'm an investor. My father Clyde runs Harris Construction Company, which I will someday inherit. Any other details about me are fairly trivial nonsense, I think.
Knopf.
I found this button in your son's crib. Does it look familiar at all?
No, not at all. Do you think the kidnapper might have left it behind?
It's a distinct possibility.
HMS Lenore. Vielleicht der richtige Vater. Hm? Ja, kann
How
auch
goes
sein.
the construction of the new airship?
There have been some complications, but nothing we can't handle.
Could you be a bit more specific?
Well, I already told you about the trouble with protesters at the yard, and we're blocked pending Royal Maverick's review of the safety regulations for the prototype etheric diffusion engines. Agitators and red tape aside, we should still be on schedule to have the Lenore finished and in the air by the end of the year. But really, Mr. Fordham, what the deuce does this have to do with finding Charles?
He has a point, you know.
Those are all the questions I had for now.
All right. If you don't mind, Mr. Fordham, I'm going back to the living room. I don't want Miriam getting suspicious.
Ja, ja. So. Hier haben wir echt eine sehr betoppende Ehe, würde ich sagen.